Good afternoon, everyone. I pray that your Sunday was full of spaces and places of joy, of happiness, of peace, of self-care. I'm really interested in knowing, what did you do yesterday specifically to take care of you? Did you spend time with your family? Did you rest? Did you give yourself a mani-pedi? Did you soak? Did you, I don't know, eat your favorite food, listen to some of your favorite speakers, watch something that made you laugh? What did you do for self-care, or did you simply decide, I'm not going to do anything? I'm going to replenish and refuel and regenerate and just be. Whatever you did, I hope that it made a difference for you. So we are continuing our conversation about things that can impact the changes that you decided that you are going to make over the next 6 months. And I said changes, but I mean change. I prefer if you'd only listed one thing. When we start adding on a lot of things we're going to do all at one time, there's a greater chance that we won't do any of them. Sometimes we take on too many tasks too quickly. So I invite you to just focus on one thing, one behavior, one part of a relationship, one action, one thing that you want to change in the next 6 months. And so we've been using the acronym HALT. Don't become too hungry, too angry, too lonely, or too tired. And we've talked about why anything in excess, becoming too hungry, too angry, too lonely, or too tired, can get you off course and may very well cause you to go back to doing those same behaviors, or staying in that relationship, or doing the same, looking at things in the same way that you had determined you wanted to change. And so today we're talking about don't become too tired. And I'm going to mix a little bit more in terms of Saturday we talked about becoming too lonely, and that seemed to really resonate with a lot of people. It appears that a lot of people are struggling with really feeling isolated or really feeling alone, even when they're in the company of someone else. And that seems to be permeating a great deal of their existence. And that can be problematic, because when we feel too alone, we feel like we have no support. We feel like there's no one for us to lean on. Our conversational skills begin to decrease. How we view ourselves begins to become more negative, because we don't have anyone to bounce it off of. Our perceptions can become more skewed. And so I want to add on with becoming too tired. And I want to talk about becoming too tired in 2 different levels. 1, physically becoming too tired, and 2, emotionally becoming too tired. Physically becoming too tired, sometimes, particularly with COVID-19 and people are working from home, people are telling me that they are actually working longer and harder than they had done when they were actually going to an office or going to a place of business. And they find themselves having much more screen time with all these Zoom conference meetings and things like that. Their eyes are becoming more tired, and they're becoming exhausted. Some people are working well past the time when their official workday should end. So they're exhausted. And what happens when you're exhausted, I want you to think about the example of a toddler. When a toddler gets exhausted, they throw tantrums, they act out. And typically as parents will say, oh, he or she is really sleepy. That's why they're behaving like that. That's why they're whining. That's why they can't be satisfied. That's why they are having, as they used to say, a hissy fit. Now, how many of you know, as an adults, when we become too tired, we can't really clearly express ourselves. We have our own types of hissy fits. We are very difficult to get along with simply because we are tired. Our concentration has been affected. We don't have a lot of inner resources to deal with, we're actually tired. And a lot of people are feeling like that because with COVID and our circadian rhythms being off, people are really struggling with being able to sleep. Now, I'm not necessarily counting this past week where there's been fireworks all over the place, and that has impacted our sleep patterns, particularly mine. But I'm talking about irrespective of the last week. Since COVID, since maybe the middle of March, people are finding that they're being very challenged with being able to get quality sleep. And if you can't get quality sleep, you become irritable. You're on edge. For some people, even before COVID-19, sleep was a challenge because when they went to sleep, they had nightmares or night terrors that represented the traumas that they incurred. And so for a lot of people, a lot of my clients, they would try to force themselves to stay awake as long as possible because they did not want to have that dream. And I talk in my book about I haven't had this dream in years and years and years, and I'm so grateful. But there was a time in my life where I had a recurring dream. And the recurring dream was very symbolic of the trauma that I had sustained. And so I never tried to stay awake to stop it from happening because I would never know when the dream would occur. But when it would occur, it would shake me up and I would not be my best self that day because I was still very much focused on the results of how I was feeling from that dream. So when you feel yourself, try to even if you're not able to sleep, try to establish a pattern that you're going to go to sleep at the same time, or at least attempt to sleep, a pattern every night. That, when you decide that that you want to go to sleep, that your bedroom is only for sleeping or for making love. Other than that, you should not think of your bedroom as those are the things that happen in that place. You want to reduce your screen time, whether it's on your computer or your screen time in terms of electronic media. I strongly suggest that you not look at TV in your room. Again, your room is for sleeping or for intimate, making love. Other than that, that's what your room should be for. Once you get your sleep patterns together, you maybe can add some other things in your room because, you may have a great place where you meditate or whatever. But for right now, let's make it a place for sleep. You want to limit how much caffeine you're putting into your body during the day. You want to look at what other types of food and even how late in the day that you're eating because your body has to digest that food. And so for a lot of us, when we can't sleep, we begin to snack. And those two things are not very helpful. We may feel like if I snack, I'll feel full and I'll get the itis and I'll fall asleep. But no, you may fall asleep, but it's not going to be quality sleep because now your body is trying to digest that food at the same time that it's trying to sleep. Now that's physically tired, so don't become too physically tired. Mentally tired could be, and I'll give you an example. I was in a relationship where the person who I was in a relationship with, when we would argue, when we would disagree, and I've talked about this before, his goal was to win the argument. His goal was to be right no matter what. And so the arguments could go on and on and on, and eventually I would emotionally get tired. And I would then shut down. I would then stop speaking or say that I was coming to a quick resolution when actually inside I had not. Nothing was resolved. I was just tired. He had wore me out. And so it felt like we were having the same arguments, the same discussions over and over and over again. And he would say that, why do we keep coming back to this? And the short answer would be, because we never resolved it. I simply backed away from it because you wore me out. And some of you have people in your life who wear you out emotionally. They make you tired. When you think about them, you can feel the life being sucked out of you. Being with them leaves you exhausted. Not because they want to do a lot of physical things, it's just that emotionally they are a lot. So I would invite you to kind of look at who you interact with and make some decisions about how much energy you're going to put into those conversations. If you're raising children, particularly teenagers, there's a really good book that talks about particularly raising teenage girls, because teenage girls are very verbal. And so when you're trying to discipline them or you are telling them you're unpleased about something, they have a lot of back and forth. They have a lot they have to say. You find yourself going back and forth with this child. And the suggestion is to stop doing that, to state what you need to state and stop repeating yourself. State it and then be done with the conversation. Don't get caught up into the back and forth. Because what happens, particularly with kids, when you go to the back and forth, I believe eventually when you get tired of doing that, that's when the physicality comes in. That's when the next thing you know, you knock somebody across the room, or you smack them, or you've kind of gone off on them physically, or you've gone off on them verbally, it's simply because you were taken to the point where you were emotionally tired of the back and forth exchange. And you find yourself doing things or saying things that you later regret. So again, I would invite you to focus on not becoming too hungry, too angry, too lonely, and for today, not to allow yourself to become too tired. Practice self-care. If you need to step away from an argument before it's done and just practice some deep breathing so that you can reinvigorate yourself, kudos, do that. And remember this one tip, nothing has to be resolved immediately. You may have to say to your partner, to whoever, I need a timeout. I need to get myself reinvigorated, okay? I'm running on fumes. I'm at this close to exhaustion, and I need to be more physically alert, more emotionally alert to be able to continue this conversation in a healthy way. You can walk away, but make sure that you arrange to come back to that discussion, and then do come back intentionally and on purpose. I am rooting for you all. I am believing for you all that the change that you said you were going to put in place, that you have been practicing it, that you are working on it. And that doesn't necessarily mean that everything's going well, because again, any change, sometimes we take steps forward, sometimes we get backed up a little, sometimes we relapse a little. But the point is to pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and keep moving forward intentionally and on purpose. Love you all, and I will talk with you tomorrow. Bye-bye.